In European and American countries, taxes on individuals account for the vast majority of government revenue. For example, in the United States, taxes on individuals account for more than 80% of government revenue. However, in most African countries, taxes on companies account for the vast majority of government revenue. Obviously, in terms of taxation, the governments of the two types of countries focus on different groups. The governments of European and American countries focus on individuals, while the governments of African countries focus on companies. Before explaining this difference, we must clarify one thing. Which group is more convenient for the government to tax? Definitely companies. There are three reasons. First, in modern society, companies are the main creators of wealth. Second, the number of companies is far less than the number of citizens. Third, all companies have to be registered with the government. So companies are subject to much stricter government regulation than individuals. Since it is more convenient to tax companies, why don't the governments of European and American countries focus on companies? Because these governments are democratically elected governments, and they are accountable to the citizens. It is not up to the governments to decide which group to choose. In contrast, the governments of African countries are not democratically elected governments, and they are not accountable to the citizens. So they can choose the group that is most convenient for them to tax. In addition to focusing on different groups, there is also a big difference between the two in terms of the method of taxing companies. In European and American countries, the governments only tax the profits of companies, which means that any company only needs to pay taxes if it makes profits. But in African countries, the governments do not tax the profits of companies, but the revenue of companies. We know that it is much easier to figure out a company's revenue than a company's profit. So it is easier for the governments in African countries to collect taxes. However, it means that any company has to pay taxes regardless of whether it has a profit or not. Obviously, this method is very unfair to companies. However, for the same reason, everyone can only endure this unfairness. Has this unfair tax system benefited the governments? Nope. Because under this tax system, the development of all companies is greatly restricted, which leads to government revenue can only be at a very low level. Today, most African countries have a GDP per capita of less than $3,000. It is clear that this tax system has made everyone a victim.